You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
What happens when you cancel the apocalypse? We're going to be asking that question and a lot more on today's episode of Systematic Ecology. We are the Priests of the Geeks as we continue on through our drive-in series, this time hanging out in the 2010s as we cover the film Pacific Rim. I'm, of course, your host, Christian Ashley, joined by my two co-hosts as we've continued on through the decades together. John Erdely, how's it going, John?
It is going exquisite, Christian.
Exquisite. Well, I'm so glad you learned a new word today, John. Matthew Winter is also here today. How are you?
I'm good. Pretty hot. It's been really hot up here in the Northwest. And of course, our state doesn't have any kind of central heating laws or anything like that. So I have no AC in my home because it's rarely over 90 up in these parts. And it's been almost 100 all week. So I'm surviving.
Yeah, my condolences. Any realm of the world with no AC is the place I don't want to be.
Hey, I've lost some weight, so I'll take that.
Look at the positives.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Let's head into this bad boy. Guys, we just went to the drive-thru. We saw Pacific Rim. What are your first reactions to seeing this film?
It's such a great popcorn flick with monsters and giant mecha machines. Reminds me of like Gundam Wing. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. Matthew?
Yeah. I mean, kaiju, sign me up. Mechs, sign me up. I mean, this just ticks so many boxes for me.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree with my co-host. This is a film made for me. This applies to, the anime side of me, the giant robot side of me, the kaiju side of me, the one that just wants to see a giant robot punch a giant dinosaur-looking thing in the face and there be collateral damage. This is your film. If you're looking for a film where science matters, where the square cube law is in effect, where physics exists, you're in the wrong film. We are here to see giant robots punch giant monsters in the face, and that's what it's all about. That's not to say that this film has nothing of, we could explore deeper inside of it, which we'll go there later on. But, I mean, yeah, popcorn flick, best way to put it. So why did we pick these movies? Out of all the movies of the 2010s, why Pacific Rim?
I want to say it's kind of indicative of the era, because I know Transformers had come out recently, and Godzilla, and it's just kind of like a good mashup of those, and it had some sci-fi elements kind of going for it. It was just a lot of fun in theaters with popcorn and stuff. It was kind of just a big monster movie. It was really just exciting to be there.
Yes. Matthew?
I don't remember what else was on the list, but I just know this is where we landed.
Yeah. As per usual, I sent out multiple movies, but hey, during that decade, not all of us were available to see those movies. So this is one we had all three seen and all three enjoyed. I'd hate to do a movie where we all hated it and we just spent time just grumbling and just being angry. That's not what we're about here. So
that could be fun, though.
Oh,
in different circumstances. Well, we don't you dare derail me. That's supposed to be Matthew's job number one.
I mean, you do the things I don't like series. So,
That is true. But I also talk about the things I do like. And there's very little in The Last Jedi I like. But we're talking about Pacific Rim, and I'm going to keep us on track.
Sorry, Josh.
As is my job, I suppose, as a person supposedly in charge of this farce. So I guess at great risk of making this worse, would you gentlemen like to explain the plot of the film?
In a nutshell, monsters.
In an actual nutshell, not a John nutshell.
Yeah. Where I just derail myself and can't go make a coherent sentence. Basically, monsters are coming out of the ocean, and the world is like, oh my god, what the heck? You know what we need? Giant robots. And that's basically the short plot of the film.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Like a simplified version. Suddenly, out of nowhere, these giant monsters just come out of the sea and attack every nation along the Pacific Rim, which is everything that connects to the Pacific. So America's in trouble, Japan's in trouble, China's in trouble, Australia's in trouble, so on, Russia, so on and so forth. So we band together and create giant robots. The only thing that can bring international unity is to do that, to save the world from these kaiju. in a film that is very influenced by that mecha genre, by this more the super robot than the real robot, as in, more Gundam sense of real robot. This is definitely super robot. This is your Mazinger Z, get a Robo, and a little bit of Neon Genesis Evangelion thrown on for fun there. This is, I mean, it's just a great film. It's not going to win any Oscars for writing or character development or anything like that, but hey, it's still fun. So, guys, what is your favorite scene or moment from this movie?
I mean, I just like watching I can't remember the bad guy's name, but he stabbed the sword through the head, and it was great.
Oh, yes. I mean, that could really happen at any moment in this film, but I think I know where you're going for there. And yeah, that's a stellar part. Matthew, how about you?
Different moments for different reasons, but I think gosh, to pick a favorite scene, probably the final battle where they're fighting like on land in the city, and there's just all the collateral damage. Like, it is Dragon Ball level where they are flying through buildings and just like landscapes are being destroyed, and it is the epic of epic.
Real quick clarification: that's actually the middle battle. The final battle is underwater. But I agree completely with Matthew.
Yes.
That is the best scene in the movie.
You're correct.
Is Russia and China's Jaegers are done for. They just get overwhelmed. Australia's Jaeger, with Jaeger being our giant mecha of this series, and they're at the point where the dad and the son team, the dad has broken his arm or something like that, so they're not at their top physical peak. And we've had Mako and Raleigh, our main characters. They've tried to become drift compatible, which means they can work alongside each other to pilot the Jaegers together. They have failed initially, but this time they come into the fight and they start kicking some butt. And we get to see that our giant mecha from before, who was once piloted by Raleigh, has been upgraded to where that sword comes out and devastates some kaiju.
Knifehead, I think, was the bad guy that stabbed through.
That sounds about right. Yeah. And real quick, I probably should have said this earlier, but the name of Jaeger for our main team is Gypsy Danger. It's spelled a little differently, but it was written in 2013, and when things were starting to change a little bit, but not everyone was quite there yet. I mean, I don't know if they would call it Roma or Romani Danger at this point in time, but that phrase has definitely fallen out of fashion as more of a racist term. So if we refer to it as such, we're not trying to propagate that. That's literally the name of the giant robot. So that's that. Any other scenes you guys can think of?
I like the flashback scenes when they were, I think they were first getting used to the Jaegers together, like the flashback of when she was little and the Jaeger attacked them, and Pentecost revealing himself. Those are really big scenes for me.
Yeah, a really good one. Anything for you, Matthew?
I did like how really towards the end they make it through the portal and they're in like the other dimension or wherever it is, and I like the way all of that looks. I loved the visualizations of where the actual invaders lived.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great visual representation of like a different place that's very foreign to Earth. And that's one of the things we learn in the film. These kaiju attacks just aren't random. They've actually been summoned and created and cloned by this invading alien force that is trying to terraform the Earth and take it over and wipe out humanity. So they're using the kaiju so that they don't have themselves get involved. But at the very end, they're all killed in a very spectacular nuclear explosion as comeuppance for what they've done.
That reminds me of Avengers.
The portal at the end there?
Yeah. Took the bomb.
Yeah, with the nuke.
Ship and blew them up.
Yeah.
Trope.
All right.
They also apparently created and sent the dinosaurs.
Yes, they also wiped out the dinosaurs, but the dinosaurs were not responsible for pollution. So here's our environmentalist message of the film. Humanity has ruined the planet just enough to where these aliens can live there now, and that's the way they prefer it, because only evil people could live in that. So we kind of brought it up. This is not a thinking man's film for the most part. I'm not saying, once again, that there's nothing you can glean from it. But guys, what do you think? Is this just some dumb action flick, or is there something more under the surface that we can discuss?
there's a little bit more under the surface than say Battleship or some other flicks or something. Action and no substance and stale acting. There was some decent acting, some decent actors and actresses. They did what they were supposed to do, and I feel like we were able to connect at least a little bit on a human level. They tried to have some flashbacks and bring in a little bit of depth, and they had some emotional stakes with characters getting killed. It wasn't, there's a little bit more on the surface.
Matthew?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Like, it's a brain, like, yes, it's absolutely just a dumb action flick, but I think for those of us who tend to be thinkers, there are some morsels. There was definitely some stuff that if I chose to, I could grab onto and absolutely just wrestle with and get a mile or two out of.
Yeah, I mean, just for example, I think of when we find out that Pentecost is dying. And he has been our main leader this whole time and trying to rally people together, trying to fight against corruption and people not willing to spend the money needed to make people survive. And yet here he is suffering because he was one of the original Jaeger pilots, but they were so hastily assembled, they weren't thinking about things like radiation poisoning. So he saved a ton of people's lives at the cost of his own. The next time he ends up in a Jaeger, that's why he's in a command position and not in the field anymore, is that he's going to die. So when he comes to the field at the end, this is him. This is so important. I'm willing to make the sacrifice play. That tells a lot about him as a character, and I really enjoy that a lot. But also as well, what do you guys think about the whole, we'll just build a wall around everything, and that'll stop the kaiju?
Well, it just seems like a typical kind of like political play where the politics just doesn't want to agree with the heroes. So I saw it in Avengers as well, where they want to try to do it some other way instead of listening to the heroes who are like, yeah, this is the way we need to do it. And they're like, nah, we're going to try it this way. This is going to work somehow, for some reason.
Matthew, any thoughts?
Not. I'm just trying to think. Probably not thoughts relevant to 2013.
Okay.
When it came out. Obviously we've got the issue of the wall and immigration and all that stuff going on now, but I don't know in 13 what they could have been kind of referencing or alluding to.
I think it was more a general sense of we're just going to do what's cheaper rather than what's actually going to do something about the problem. And so, hey, we're doing something about it, and therefore vote for me. But at the end of the day, what actually saves people is what costs more, what takes more of an effort to do, what actually, has more of a human side of it is, the Jaeger program. John, you were about to say something, I think?
I was just going to say, it's just the stupidity of humanity shown in movies where it's always like the majority of people tend to make stupid mistakes, kind of like in The Day After Tomorrow, where the majority of people just went out in the cold and got killed instead of listening to the experts.
Yes. Oh, what a terrible movie. I've watched that so many times.
I love that movie.
That's one of my wife's favorites.
Yeah. That's one you've got to watch with a group of people you got to just heckle it together as a team. Yeah. As opposed to this one, which is actually a good movie, where we also see some things here like, connections with people and what that means and actually sharing part of yourself with someone and the cost of doing that. In the series, if we poorly explained it, I'm sorry, but you have the idea of being drift compatible. The central premise of that is that you and another person are so in sync with one another that you are able to deal with the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings of the other person while they too at the same time are dealing with those same things, because you are linking your minds together so you can pilot these giant robots, because it's too much for just one person to do. There's only been 2 people in history who have done it solo, and they didn't last very long in that scenario. So on the topic of drift compatibility, is there anyone in your lives that you think you'd be drift compatible with? You don't have to use names if you don't want to. We don't have to dox people here.
If I say anyone but my wife, then I'm going to be in trouble.
And you know what? I think you and Barbara will get along quite well. As much as she messes with you, as much as we do that together, I think she looks after your welfare, you look after hers a lot, and the two of you are quite in sync. So I'm fine with that choice. Matthew?
There are days where I can barely handle my own mind. The thought of what's the word? Perpetrating this mess on someone else is just
Inflicting.
yes, inflicting. Yes. I can barely handle myself most days. So the thought of letting someone else in here is it would have to be someone that I do not like very much.
Yes. Yeah. For me, I know my brother and my dad, we'd be perfect for this. We don't always think in sync with one another, but we do it enough to where and we're going to have a good time. We're going to respect each other and then make fun of the other. And for the most part, we're on the same page. If my mother were more, combat minded at times, I'd say we'd be drift compatible, but I don't think she would be right for this setting. So I would exclude her for the list. I would even throw John into the mix here because John and I just kind of click. And as much as he takes my bullying and my abuse, like he's able to fire back. He's learned to stand up for himself. He's learned to beat up his bully, and I think he would do that very effectively in a Jaeger with me.
We play video games very well together, and I feel like when we're faced with a common enemy, we unite very well. We utilize our powers, abilities, and we make the most of everything. Like Tales of Vesperia, and we were playing together.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, playing in sync in video games is a great way of looking at it. But once the common enemies are gone, once the kaiju are dead, I don't know if it's going to work anymore. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add laughter for the second.
Okay, yeah. So I skipped over a question. My bad. How were we introduced to this film?
I know I saw it in theaters. I can't remember the context or who I went to see it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because I know I saw it in Lumina Theater on campus for UNC Wilmington, but I don't know if you were there with me, because I know for sure Matt Bailey was there with me, but I can't remember who else. Maybe Cameron?
It's possible. I know I saw some movies with Matt Bailey and Cameron. And we went to the Lumina Theater because it was only like $3 a ticket. That was pretty affordable for us college students.
Oh, very much so. They take films that had like just come out of theaters and charge a little bit for that and some popcorn and stuff like that. It was perfect for college students needing some help with their finances to actually see movies. Matthew, how about you?
I think I saw it with my cousin. I don't remember. I know that was kind of the 2013. Yeah, that was kind of the era where me and my cousin were still super close, and we would see a lot of movies and get drinks and things like that a bunch. So probably Adam. Shout out if you listen to this. But maybe.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, one other thing. Sorry, I'm realizing how much of a failure I am as a host. I forgot to put another question in here that's not in your outlines. But we see in the movie like Raleigh and Mako's relationship kind of developing as friends. But do you, at the end of the film, there's a scene where they're both really happy to see each other, hugging each other. Do you see them as a romantic couple, or am I just shipping for craziness?
I mean, it's a common shared trauma trope where they kind of get shipped together just because they've had shared trauma.
Okay. Matthew?
It could be the shared trauma, but also I think, I don't know how you could intimately share that much of yourself with someone like that if there's someone you're attracted to at all and not walk away with some kind of deeper connection. Because you're literally inside the other person when you drift,
fully exposed.
Yeah.
I'm a helpless romantic at heart, and I definitely see them as a couple. Yes, hopeless. And I could see where at the end they're just friends, and I'm okay with that. But also at the end of the day, I think there's just a little spark there that if they had an actually good sequel to this movie, we would have actually explored it. Speaking of, have you seen Uprising, and do you care?
I have not seen it. I know that John Boyega is in it, and that's all I know.
I haven't seen it.
Well, I will say, for your sakes, you're better off. Feel free to disagree with me. in the comments below or elsewhere because I don't much care for it. And I think John Boyega was shafted yet again by a major motion picture company.
That's what I've heard, which is mainly why I haven't really gone out of my way to try and see it.
There's also an anime as well that came out on Netflix. I have not watched, I think there's 2 seasons, very short. I've heard it's okay at best, but have not actually watched it myself. But this is definitely a franchise I'd love to see more of under competent hands. Because you can tell, like, there's a love for the genres mixed here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Not just that, but like I think there's enough. Like you said, in competent hands with someone who could storytell and character build, like there is enough to make this an absolutely killer franchise.
Oh, yeah. Well, gentlemen, do you have anything else you want to discuss before we start the wrap up? Well, I was going to get to that, though. You're also kind of soft there with your volume. Not sure why.
Is that a little bit better?
A little bit better. All right. So now that John has spoiled the question, let's go there. How do you gentlemen like your popcorn when you go to the movies?
In the movie theater, smothered in butter and way too much salt to go.
All right.
Yeah, if I'm at the theater, I'm doing popcorn, I just go for it. I always get like the extra butter flavoring or like whatever they give you the options for like the extra stuff. And it just it's so bad for me and it is so good. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, typically, I almost never go to movies here unless I'm with a friend, and that's few and far between. But if I go out with my dad, he does this thing where I cringe, but at the same time, I'm grateful because of what he does. Is he asks like, "Hey, halfway through putting the popcorn in, can you give it to me so I can put butter in the middle, and then fill it up again so that he can put butter on the top?" And I'm like, that makes so much sense, but it's also making the employees do extra work. I mean, this like I don't feel good about this, but I do enjoy the benefits of it. So that's definitely how I have mine when I'm with him.
Most of the time, though, I don't. Typically, where I see movies, we have a bar here in town that has a second run movie theater. So that's typically where I see all my movies because I can have a good burger and I can have a beer and I can watch my movie.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So with Pacific Rim as our 2010s pick, how would you rate this film out of 10?
I give it a solid 8. It's definitely a great action flick. I consider it kind of classic quality. It's almost top tier, but it's a lot of fun. There is a little bit of depth and emotional thing.
I would pretty much echo that and probably give it an 8. For this kind of movie, like there's enough depth and enough development that there's enough to grab my interest. I struggle with like knuckle dragging, brain dead action movies, and there's enough going on in this that this is just above that, and it's fantastic. I also don't felt like they developed anything that was like left hanging. There wasn't any kind of like loose threads or anything like that. So solid 8 from me.
Okay. Yeah, if I'm thinking critically about this film, if I'm actually writing a review, it's probably an 8.5 out of 10. Like, not everything in this film is very cohesive. It's not perfect. It's not the greatest structure. But if I'm talking about sheer enjoyment, this sucker is a 10 out of 10. Like, I can watch this movie on repeat. Like, oh man, did you see that when a giant robot smashed a giant monster in the head? Yes, that was the last scene. It happened again. And I'm going to keep watching that over and over again because that makes that little child inside could go, yes, I want to see more of that. That's why I like watching Ultraman and Godzilla and all these, mecha anime. Like, give me more of that. So from a critical point, 8.5 out of 10. Enjoyment, 10 out of 10, completely and utterly. So listeners, thank you for your time here with us. Please, if you get a chance, leave a 5-star review in your podcasting platform of choice. Help us with the ratings there. And as well, since you guys got us to over 100 subscribers on YouTube, you can send us your questions. You can do so at systematicgeekology@gmail.com or on our Facebook page, Priest of the Geeks, or you can do it on our Discord page and episode discussions. We'd love to have your questions so we can answer them. We're going to get as many hosts as possible on a Q&A episode. As well, to shout out some patrons, Russell Gentry, Justin Vaughn, Annette Knoll, and Jeannie Mattingly. Thank you guys for all that you do. You're the best. But remember, we are all the chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network.